meeting of the Antelope Valley Eastern Water Agency. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Division 7, Gary Van Dam. Gary.
Here.
Thank you. Audrey Miller.
Here.
Robert Paris.
Here.
George Lane.
Here.
Shelley Sourceable.
Here.
Frank Donato.
Here.
Keith Dias.
Here. Roll call of officers.
Dwayne Chisholm.
Here.
James Markman.
Here.
And Holly Hughes present.
Thank you. Item 3, voluntary public roll call. If any member of the public wishes to introduce themselves, please feel free to do so now.
John Joyce reporting for the Roseman News.
And Vincent. Okay, item 4, public comments and period open to the public. If anyone wishes to address the board on any item not on the agenda, please feel free to do so now. Hearing none, we'll move along to item 5. Do I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
This is Director Sourceable. I'll move to approve the agenda item 5A1.
Thank you.
This is Director Donato, second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes.
Shelley Sourceable.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you. Item 6, consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar?
This is Director Sourceable. I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you.
This is Director Miller. I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes.
Shelley Sourceable.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you. Item 7A, Finance Committee. Director Donato, do you have a report?
Yes, we do. Finance Committee met yesterday on several items, and I'm going to go ahead and with 7A1, A2, and A3. I'm going to have the operations manager, Mr. Bozigian, address the board on items that we're going to be voting on tonight.
Thank you, Director Donato. Good evening. As the board recalls, the board did approve the list of asset replacement projects as part of the 2021-2022 budget. And the projects I'm going to present tonight will be completed by our in-house maintenance department. But since there's a long lead time for most of the items that they need to complete these projects, we'd like to get them ordered right away. We went over these projects in pretty good detail with the Finance Committee yesterday. A lot of good questions. So in the interest of time, I'll try to streamline the presentations a little bit tonight. General overall terms, the overall budget for the items being presented tonight is $392,000. The overall cost, cumulative cost for all these projects is $338,707.52. And then the overall budgetary savings is $53,292.48. So we are tracking under budget. A couple of the projects did end up singularly over budget, but overall we're tracking under, which is always what we try to do. So we split up we've grouped these 3 presentations into, there's 11 total projects, but we grouped them into 3 separate presentations because there's 3 different vendors that are going to be providing these components for these projects. And we'll start with projects ER 2210, 2214, 2218, 2221, and 2223. These are all the same. These are to replace the existing free chlorine analyzers at each treatment plant: Quartz Hill, Roseman, Eastside, Westside Water Bank, and Mojave Tank Farm. And what these units do is they measure the amount of free chlorine in the water. So we know what the demand is out in the system, the chlorine demand, and we can dose appropriately at the treatment plants. Most of these units were installed as part of the DBP project in 2008, 2009. And the current models that we have are obsolete. They're not being supported by the factory anymore. So slowly over the last few years, we've changed a few of them to the Hach instrumentation models. Hach is a huge instrumentation company, great factory support, and we did a lot of research, and the units that we are getting are really top of the line. They stay in calibration, very few moving parts, and very, very accurate. So they are proprietary, so we didn't solicit bids. Hach is the only one that can provide their own instruments, and that does fall under the sole source exception in our purchasing policy, so we are following the policy on that. The capital budget for these items is $158,000, and the total quote, including tax and shipping, was $127,891. So we're budgetary savings of $30,109 on this group of projects. So we would ask the board to consider approving these projects in the amount of $127,891.
Okay, this is Director Donato. So am I going to, when I make the motion, is it on 7A1, 2, and 3?
No, just 7A1.
Just 7A1?
Yes.
Okay. I move we accept 7A1.
Do we have a second?
This is Director Sourceable. I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
George Lane,
Yes.
Kelly Sourceable,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes. Measure passes. Thank you.
Okay. 7A2 is asset replacement projects EN 22-02 and ER 22-07. And on our capital list, each project has an identifying number, and that's what these signify. So the first of these, both of these projects, the items are going to be supplied by Crowley Pump Systems. We did go out to bid. And the first is 2 existing rapid mix pumps at the Quartz Hill treatment plant, which were installed in 2008 as part of the DBP project. What these pumps do is the raw water coming into the plant runs through a 60-inch pipe, and then we inject aluminum sulfate. And these pumps pump water against the flow of the influent water to rapid or flash mix these chemicals with the water, because you need to get that done immediately before the water enters the plant. So we look always at our areas of the plants and distribution system that are most vulnerable, and we do not have a spare pump. These rapid mix pumps, we have 2 and we alternate them, but we don't have a spare. So we thought it'd be prudent to purchase a spare pump. These are special pumps. They're we when we did our budget, we priced them according to the usual pumps that we have, but then we realized when we got bids that these Gould's pumps are pretty. I don't know how to explain it, but they're pretty proud of them. Let's just say that. So we budgeted. We budgeted 12. Sorry, let me get this straight. Okay, so the overall capital budget for number. Hold on, get my notes out. Okay, so EN 22-02, and that's for the rapid mix pump. We budgeted $12,000, and we solicited quotes from Crowley Pump Systems, Brax Process and Control, and Multi-W Systems. The price came in at $21,362.60. So that project is $9,362 over budget. But the low price was from Crowley Pump Systems. So we would ask that you go with that one. The second project on 7A2 is, again, with those two rapid mix pumps. Our maintenance department, instead of replacing the pump, where we are going to get this spare, but instead of just replacing the pump, our maintenance department is going to rebuild these pumps. And we thought we would do one this year and one next year. So we budgeted $7,000 for rebuild parts for one pump. And the parts came in at $10,856. Again, from Crowley Pump Systems. So we're $3,856 over budget. But that is what the parts cost, and we will be able to do it in-house, which is a good thing. So overall, let's see, on 7A2, we would ask that the board approve in the amount of $32,218.60, awarding this proposal to Crowley Pump Systems. They were the low bid.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, this is Director Nato. I move that we go ahead and accept 7A2, not to exceed $32,218.60.
Do we have a second?
This is Director Sersabal, second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Gary Van Dam, Gary,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
George Lane,
Yes. Yes.
Shelley Sorsable,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Hach Dias.
Yes. The measure passes. Thank you.
Okay, and that not to exceed is good because these prices all do include tax and shipping. So we make sure to include that. All right, 7A3 is the last staff report we'll present, and those are asset replacement projects ER 2202, 2205, 2217, and 2212. And the first of these projects is, if you've walked through the treatment plant, you know at the headworks of each clarifier, there's what we call floc motor drive units. And they keep the particles in the water, as we inject the aluminum sulfate, they keep them suspended as they move down the clarifier. Pretty key to the treatment process. Well, as you know, the plant's been expanded several times, and different style mixers have been installed. And we are trying to standardize. So we're going to replace the oldest mixers that we have, the 6 oldest mixers. And we're going with the Chemineer brand, which is what we have mostly at the plant. They're readily available for parts. They don't need really a lot of maintenance. So we thought it's prudent just to standardize with those. We did send out RFPs to, again, Crowley Pump Systems, Brax Process and Control, and Multi-W Systems. And we received quotes from Brax and from Multi-W. Now, Brax Process and Control was the low bid for this project at you have to excuse me, I have my notes scattered all over the place. We budgeted there we go. Okay, so we budgeted $135,000 for this project. Brax Process and Control came in as the low bid at give me a second here. $123,209. That's $11,791 under budget. Just for interest, Multi-W Systems, who we've done a lot of work with over the years, they came in at $103,000, $711, and they wanted to supply the motor and the pump. They would not split them up, and therefore we said, no, we don't need motors. We just want to get the pumps. Crowley Pump Systems did not submit a bid. They were not interested in submitting a bid on those units because they are proprietary. So with that, I apologize. I got mixed up. We did not get competitive bids on the Chemineers because they are proprietary. I was looking at the next one. So let's go back to that. So with the Chemineer pumps for Brax Pump and Equipment, Process and Control, they're going to be $123,209. So we are under budget by $11,000 on that. The next one, ER 2205, we have existing decant pumps at the treatment plant at Forts Hill. As we remove the water from the clarifiers, we send it across the street to the drying ponds, and we bring the water back up to the headworks of the plant. We rely on 2 pump stations. There's 3 pumps in each station. And this is the original pump station, and the pumps are not rebuildable anymore. We've been having a lot of problems and failures with them. And so we thought it'd be good to replace these 3 pumps with our new asset replacement budget. So we did solicit bids on these, and we solicited bids from our 3 friends at Brax Process and Control, Multi-W, and Crowley. And the Brax Process and Control came in as a low bid at $32,247.38. Budget of $40,000, so we're about $7,700 under budget on that. And the Multi-W, as I said, Multi-W wanted to supply the motors too, and we didn't need them. So with that being said, we'll move to the last 2. The last 2 I'll just kind of join together because they're for the same thing. They're we call them bridge pumps. At Roseman and Eastside, we remove sludge from clarifiers in a different method than we do Quartz Hill. We use these big pumps on a traveling bridge, and we would like to replace 2 pumps at each site. And these pumps are exactly the same. We did put out proposals to the 3 companies again, and Brax Process and Control did get the bid for $11,570.77 at each facility. So that would be a savings of $8,400 and almost $8,430 at each site. Multi-W did not bid, and typically they do bid on these kind of things, and Crowley did not bid. Shelley asked a good question at finance. Why aren't we seeing more people bidding on these things? And The best reason I can find is that the supply chain, as we've seen with the pandemic, the supply chain has been interrupted, not just at the factories that are producing these things, but delivery. We've seen a lot of problems with the freight companies. And I think the bigger pump companies are first in line to get pumps and components, and the smaller ones like Multi-W, they know they can't get the pumps at this point in time, so they don't even bid on it. Tracking under budget. So overall, on 7A3, for all these projects combined, we would like the board to approve $178,597.92 to Brax Process and Control.
Do we have a motion?
This is Frank. I'll go ahead and make a motion on the board order 7A3 that we approve not to exceed $178,597.
This is Shelley. I'll second.
I'm sorry, Frank, could you repeat the amount?
Yeah, the amount was $178,597.92.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Gary Van Dam, Gary, Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Gary. Shelley Sorsable,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you.
I'd like to close with this.
Yes.
I want to thank John for the extensive research and work he did on these. We heard similar, but a lot more. And he's doing a really good job despite all the stuff that's going on in society. So I thank again, John, for this in-depth report.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you all. I appreciate your patience. Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Good report. Item 7B, Planning Committee. Director Sorsabal, do you have a report?
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to General Manager Chisholm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board President Dias, members of the board. This is consideration of possible action on the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and the 2021 Water Shortage Contingency Plan and Appendix J as an addendum to the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan. As you're aware, we had a public hearing several weeks ago in June, and there were several questions that were brought up by the board, and also there was a revision to remove the water supply that's associated with the Memorandum of Understanding with Waterworks 40, which has been accomplished. Rob Morrow is here from Water System Consulting to provide a presentation of the revisions that have been made and to answer the specific questions that were brought up during the public hearing in June. With that, I'll turn it over to Rob for moving forward with his presentation.
All right, thank you, Dwayne. So as Dwayne mentioned, going to cover some of the urban water management plan today, and I'm going to have a couple set of slides. The first set 7 or 8 slides is really the assumptions and findings of the urban water management plan, and the latter half is addressing addressing the specific questions we received at the public hearing in June. Next slide, please. So the resolution before you today is to approve and adopt your 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, the 2021 Water Shortage Contingency Plan, and the Appendix J addendum to the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yes.
For the public that's listening in, can you explain a little bit why we have to do this and where is it coming from? So that way they'll know.
Yes. Why don't we go to the next slide, please? So, urban water management plans are required by California Water Code to be prepared every 5 years on the 5s and the 0s. And they are a long-term supply and drought planning tool. They've got prescriptive elements. And so every water provider that has 3,000 connections or more, or delivers 3,000 acre feet or more in the state, submits one. So over 400 across the state. It promotes local and regional coordination. We coordinated with your customers during this process, and you'll be updating it 5 years from now. So it's a snapshot of what we know today, and our best estimates is what's going to be happening in the future, but obviously can be revisited or will be revisited in 5 years. It's become a conduit for reporting on water conservation and water use. It's standardized across the state so that there can be data analysis of the data that's submitted by every retailer. And then also it's a prerequisite for most state loans and grants. And I'll add the Water Shortage Contingency Plan has always been required, but was substantially expanded from the 2015 plan due to the recent 2012-2016 drought. And so there's a lot more information in that this round that is pertinent to when your agency may declare water shortages. And the last piece, the 2015, the addendum, the 2015 plan addresses new requirements that are related to using water that has an impact on the delta and conveying that your long-term plan is to reduce water use from the delta. So the process, we released a public draft on May 25th of this year. We worked with your retailers, as I mentioned, and with staff for about 6 months before then to get that public draft out. June 8th, we held a board meeting, public hearing. Again, we got comments, and here we are today, August 24th. So things go as hoped tonight, and the Urban Water Management Plan and other documents are approved and adopted. We'll submit all the documents to the Department of Water Resources within the week. Next slide, please. So the main conclusions from the Urban Water Management Plan are, number one, in normal or average and wet years, AVEC has sufficient supplies for recharge and exchanges, and it far exceeds your demand. And that's the main supply assumption we're using is from the 2019 State Water Project Delivery Capability Report from DWR, which projects state water project reliability to decrease over the next 20 years from an average supply of 58% to 52%. So that's the big assumption. Now, the key is in dry years to have access to your groundwater banks and pull on that water you were able to recharge in the wetter years or in average years even. And as demands grow, your demands on your groundwater bank are going to grow. So you're going to need to expand your recharge, recovery, and conveyance capacity. So those are the two high-level conclusions. The next few slides are some basic numbers and assumptions of how we got there. So what this is showing is population. Oh, go ahead. Someone have a comment? Nope. Okay. The orange line is population projection. So this is tied to SCAG, Southern California Area Government's projections of about 1.3% per year, as well as Kern County Organization of Governments, KCOG. And so these are standard used across for all planning efforts in all sectors. And so what we did was say, the use in the last few years has been reduced because we came out of the drought. And the biggest question every retailer in the state has is, how much may demand increase coming out of this drought? Will people start using a lot more water now that there's no more restrictions? Although we're now entering restrictions again, of course. Did people stop watering their lawn? Now they're going to water it again. And so we took a conservative approach and assumed the gallons per capita per day of your customers over your whole service area would increase from about 185 gallons per capita per day to about 205 gallons per capita per day over the next 5 years. And that's under normal conditions. Drought conditions with restrictions, it would be lower. And so that's why you see the green line crossing the orange line, because water use per capita is increasing over that time. So that's probably the biggest question we're going to be following the next few years is individual water use. And then over time, it actually gets a little closer as just passive conservation occurs, where if you buy new houses are more efficient, you buy new toilets and things like that, they're more efficient to what they're replacing. And then the bottom line is your demand on your system. So it subtracts out the supplies of your retailers, the local supplies, and so those would be your actual sales. So the difference between that would be like the groundwater rights of your customers, or the return flows they're getting. And so that's projecting to go from about 41,000 acre feet to about 58,000 acre feet over the next 25 years. Excuse me.
Question?
Yes.
So now, the governor, I think it was maybe Brown, or I think it was Brown that said that, ex-Governor Brown, said that we're going to cut back water use per person, like 50 some gallons a day. Is that really going to happen? If it does, is that been equated into this formula?
So it's a good question. So the legislation passed under Governor Brown, the shorthand for it now is 20 by 2020, which is a 20% cut in water use by 2020. And the target for your overall service area to meet that, each of your retailers weighted by population is 230 gallons per capita per day. And so we're actually assuming, and you've been way under that. You're at 170 at the bottom of the drought, and you're at about 185 right now. So we're assuming you're going to increase, but not go all the way back to that. So it's still substantially lower than pre-drought use. Now there's new legislation that, there's legislation from 2018 that's being implemented now, where every retailer is going to have to report on their water use, and this is going to start in 2022. So the details aren't out yet. But one of the values that is a component of that overall water use is suggested is 50 gallons per capita per day for indoor residential water use. And so I think that's where the 50 number you may have heard came from. And so that's being discussed and proposed, and over the next 6 to 9 months, those numbers will be finalized, and by next year we'll know what those targets are. We did a back of the envelope look at what indoor use is, because it's, meters aren't set up to differentiate, but you can look at use patterns, and it looked like your area was in the 60 to 70 range, which is actually pretty good. But it's going to take a lot more data from your retailers to really better understand that. Is there any other questions on this?
I was just thinking what you said, because I'm thinking in the middle of summer in the Antelope Valley, construction workers at 100-degree plus temperature, That means they take a shower about every third day. Is that what they do? I had to say that. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I mean, you know, I mean, it's crazy. It's some of this stuff. It's crazy. Oh.
There's definitely lots of comments coming in, and some proposals are as low as 42 GPCs for indoor residential. So,
well, this is another thing that really puzzles me. I just don't understand in this, urban water management, why aren't we going to not counting the trees, but the lawn part of it is the biggest waste of water runoff anywhere.
And part of so that water use objective, I wish I had a slide for it, but it looks at indoor water use and for residential, and it looks at outdoor water use for both residential and all other metered connections. And they're calculating a regionally adjusted efficient irrigation factor, so it will be part of that water use factor. And the goal is between those two numbers overall, they want every retailer to be able to meet an efficient use of water. And then they can decide how to best do that, whether it's outdoor or indoor. But a year from now, we'll know a lot more about how this is actually going to play out.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, no more questions. We'll go to the next slide.
I do have one more. I'm sorry. The figure here, I got it written down. You said you project growth for the next 25 years, give or take, is that population growth or water usage growth of the 1.3%?
1.3 is the population growth.
Makes sense. Interesting. Okay, well, that's our area. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the basic, quote unquote normal year, and basically an average supply versus demand. So those the light blue bars are your state water project supply, going down from the 58% average yield to 52%, and then you've got your consistent supply of groundwater rights, and that includes a little bit of return flows, as well as non-state water project water that you've acquired. So, the main takeaway here is you've got a big buffer on average in normal conditions between your supply in the 80,000s and your demand, which is going from about 40,000 to about 58,000. And you generally, based on these numbers, you've got more surplus supply or available surface water, imported water supply for recharge, basically in years that are roughly 30% allocation or higher because of that, with that gap. Now, of course, we've got wild swings in the availability of water, and it's the dry years that everyone's really testing. So on the next slide, we can show how you meet. I'll put the assumptions for the dry year assumptions. We looked at a single dry year as a 5% allocation, which is this year's allocation, and as well as 2014's. And then the DWR delivery capability report did a 82-year simulation of the historic hydrology with existing state water project operations and existing constraints, and then also looked at the lower percentage in the future as incorporating climate change and some other considerations. But the driest year in that driest 5 years in that simulation averaged about 20%, and that was 1988 to 1992. And in this last drought, we actually averaged 37% for 2012 to 2016. So that it wasn't as bad as the worst 5 years that were simulated in the most recent DWR report. And those are the assumptions we use for an extended drought analysis. Again, roughly averaging 20%. So in the next slide, we'll look at the single dry year. So this is fairly straightforward. Along the bottom, that blue bar is down at a 5% allocation. so just over 7,000 acre feet. You've got your normal groundwater rights plus some return flows that have been happening, and then you've got your non-state water project water. And the balance of supplies is assumed to come from your groundwater bank.
Okay, question right there.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for you to say that. So next year, 2022, is the last year under the stipulated judgment, the groundwater adjudicated groundwater basin we're in. That's the last year that the people can use full amount of water, and then it drops 40 to 70%. Those we have somewhere roughly between 20 and 30 water purveyors that use AVAC water. Where are they going to make up that water from? Okay. So, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So next year is we have a ramp down program that was part of the stipulated judgment, and next year's the 5th year, which is 2022. So starting 2023, the water companies that are out there that have been using 90% of their wells that have been cut. I mean, we don't know. I don't know exactly every numbers for each district, but they're cut back between 40 and 70% what they're using this year or last year. So they're going to be making that water up somehow. And from what we're in the judgment, it basically alludes to using more state water, which is AVAC. Was that calculated in the groundwater management program?
Yeah, and if you go back a few slides go 2 more. Oh, that one. Sorry, you got it. Sorry, the slide numbering is different than what I have. Go one more slide. 13, 14. There, 13. Okay, there we go. So the difference between the green and the yellow here, the green is the total customer demand in your service area, and the yellow is the demand on your system. That assumes that customers are using their full groundwater allocations, and those allocations have been adjusted to the ramp down starting in 2023. So
I've got a question. So that okay, I understand what it says here, but have you went and did you track the 28, 30 purveyors that use AVAC water to see what more demands would be on AVAC versus what they're legally allowed to pump?
So
Well, here's an example.
Yeah.
If they're, I know what you're saying here, and I agree with that. The question I'm asking, was it entertained when this decision was made that if somebody's pumping right now 500 acre feet of water and they're cut back to 300 acre feet of water per year, they got to make up that 200 acre feet of water. They're going to become AVAC looking for that water. I was asking for because everyone's different. Every water company has a different ratio that would use AVAC's water. I was just curious if that was implemented into this graph.
Yeah, well, I guess the green captures all demand regardless of supply. So we look back a few years, and we look back at all the years that the water master reporting has happened. And AVEX, so we've got historical AVEX deliveries plus the water master reports to get the total water use.
Rob, this is Matt. Maybe I can help with Director Donato's question if I understand it correctly. So, Frank, what we used in the urban water management plan, supply and demand numbers, is our customers' production rights, not their ramp down number. So it takes into account only their production rights, and haven't accounted for that difference in the example that you gave between their ramp down number and their production number.
So Matt, are you saying that if their production right is, let's say they're pumping right now 500 acre feet of water, but the production right is 300 acre feet of water? That's my question. Was those ratios included into this graph?
Yes. Yeah, we used, in your example, we used the 300 acre foot number for the customer's supply.
Okay, so then then they come to us for the extra 200 acre feet of water, correct?
Correct, and that's captured in our projected demand.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a good clarification because that's gonna, that would come up.
Okay, if we could then slide back to that single dry year slide. Two more, there we go. So, this is showing the need for supply from your groundwater banks in a single dry year, which is a 5% state water project allocation year. And what these numbers end up representing in the yellow is basically your production capacity you're going to need coming out of your groundwater banks. And so I'm not showing 2020 here, but the number for 2020 would be about 24,000. And so it's showing that over time you're going to need to increase your recovery capacity. And we'll talk about that in response to some of the questions we got last week in a few slides. Next slide, please. Sorry, is there any questions on this? Okay. All right, next slide. So this one is what would happen in that 5-year drought, that 20% average. And what that orange bar is how much water, the imported water you've recharged, how much of that would you need to pull out of the groundwater banks during an extended drought. And the orange bar is then compared with the top bar, which is your policy size for your groundwater bank, which is 3 straight years of 10% allocation. And so what it's showing is that with your current policy, it's providing a buffer between how much of the groundwater bank you are projected to use under the design drought of roughly a 20% allocation for 5 years, and how much you're going to want, or how much your target is to have in the bank. So again, and I guess I'll mention too that 2020 number is about 75,000, and going into this year, at the beginning of the year, you guys had about 90,000 acre feet in the bank. Any questions here?
So this is interesting, very interesting. So you're basically saying, yeah, we had 90-some thousand acre feet of water. Now, these periods here, basically, if we can keep that those numbers stabilized during those periods you have there, we should be okay if we run into a drought or something like that to cover the residents here in the Antelope Valley.
Right, and the orange bars is based on the design drought, and of course things could be worse, and so having a buffer is a smart approach. And the board's policy of 3 years at 10% allocation to size the bank provides sufficient storage.
So we need, basically, what I see here, if we can run about 200,000 acre feet of water ongoing, if that's our ultimate goal, we should be able to take care of a 3-year drought.
I missed the number you said.
I said 200,000 acre feet of water in our bank.
Yeah, I mean, this is so what this chart is saying is your targets in 2045 is 132,900 acre feet, and in a 5-year drought, you're only going to need to use 110,800 acre feet from that bank.
But you got to remember too that when we start banking that water, it doesn't perk down immediately the same week and same day.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, if we have around 200,000, we get to the point of 200,000 acre feet of water. If there is an issue, well, that means we're not putting in the next year or two after that. If there is a drought, we're not putting water back in the ground. So it will stagnate the process of adding more water to the bank. So that's something. That's what I would look at as the directors are aim for 200,000. That would take care of, by adding these let's see, from 25 to 35, that 10-year period, it will be cutting it pretty close to do something like that. 10 years, I mean, in the banking business, you got to figure it takes, to get it all the way down there, it takes a good year, maybe even longer, to get that water from the top down to the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, any other questions on this one? I got one more slide, and we'll deal with the questions from last week. And I got some kids running outside the door, so apologize. So this one slide was to specifically address the main change that happened from the draft urban water management plan to the final that's before you, and that was removing the LA County Waterworks District's MOU supplies, which were supplies tied to increased demand from LA County Waterworks. And what we're trying to just show here is that that yellow bars is the supplies. And so that's what was shown before. But as you showed a few slides earlier, you still have plenty of supply, more than sufficient buffer between your supply and demand in 2045. And I think that probably influenced the decision on the MOU. Does anyone have any questions on this?
Yeah, I do. I agree with you. It was a very good, when I first saw this, it was very encouraging. But the question I have is, you did our urban water management. Who did LA County's? Were you the same people, or they have a different group?
They had a different consultant, but we did have been talking to them for the past 6+ months.
Okay, and I want to point out to the board that we had now 2 independent studies done, and District 4 D40 concurred that they have a surplus of water, and that's one of the reasons why they are going to dismantle the MOU as well. So that was really good. That, because sometimes somebody would say, well, you just tell them what they want to hear. In this case, they had their own independent study. We had ours, and the conclusion was we pretty much agree on what these numbers are.
Yeah, and they are relying on their imported water supplies from you, from Avek, as well as their groundwater and their groundwater supplies. Okay, if there's no more comments here, I can move to address the few questions we got last week, and these may be a bit repetitive from what I said, so I'll keep it short. Next slide, please. So the first question was, how will AVEC meet our customer demands during multiple dry years without completion of the SNP Phase 2 project? And I mentioned earlier that the target for recovery with a 5% year would require about 24,000 acre feet per year of capacity. And your existing capacity is roughly 25,000 acre feet, though Matt has mentioned previously that you'll be doing a stress test on the system this fall to confirm sizing. And once SNP Phase 2 project is online, you'll have much more capacity to be able to move that water from the... I'm on a conference call. Can you talk to mommy, please? She's the one who isn't afraid of anyone. So that's Willa. Okay. So the SNP Phase 2 will move water from the west side water bank and can move it all the way down to Quartz Hill, which is huge to be able to meet demands all across your system. Let's see. I think the last thing, just timing-wise, SEEP was done. Design is about to start, and I don't know if there's anything else, Matt, you want to provide on a SNP update right now.
No, that's pretty good, Rob. Design is well underway, and our plan is to start construction in 2022.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next slide. So how many years of customer demands does AVEC have stored in the water banks if there are continued dry years? So I talked about that a little bit already, and one of the required reporting items in the Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan is what happens if you have a 5-year drought starting next year. And, we're now in 2021, but, and this is applying the lowest 5 years of state water project from the simulation. And the green bar is your water bank. And the yellow is what you're pulling from your water bank. So in 2021, if you had that's a 12% allocation year, you're using about 20 or 15,000 acre feet from your bank to help meet demand. And then, and so you reduce your groundwater bank size, the green, from 90,000 to about 75,000. And then that continues to reduce over time as you have to pull from your bank during low years. But you can see even 2022, 2024, those were like 30% and 27% allocation years. You're not even having to pull from your bank at those points because of your other supplies. And so right now you're in a good position to weather an extended drought. Any questions on that? Okay. Next slide, please. So how does AVEC maintain the target groundwater storage goals if there are multiple years of below average state water project allocation? And so these are the targets that you've seen presented slightly differently before, but the orange is the annual production target and the blue is the total storage target. And as I mentioned, when you've got state water project allocations above 30%, you have sufficient supplies to recharge. And so, in the simulation that DWR did, it's 80 to 90% of the years are above 30%. Obviously, we've had an extended dry period, and so has not been the case the last 10 years. But there will be time soon enough we'll be able to recharge and build that bank back up. Any questions here? Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, two more questions. This is just a continuation. So how does AVEC maintain the target groundwater storage goals if there are multiple years below average? So this is just showing how basically that blue space between above your demand is available for recharge. And again, any year above a 30% year. Next slide, please. So this last one I think I addressed earlier on, but it was, does the plan address new water supply needed if the region has significant growth? And so, yes, it's accounted for in the demand projections. The pace of growth is what's been assumed. Of course, if the pace is higher, then demand would grow quicker. If the pace is lower, the demand would grow slower. But this is the long-term population and then related demand projection. And that's actually all I have. If anyone has any more questions on this slide or anything else for the Urban Water Management Plan.
Mr. President, this is Rob. I had a question.
Yes, please, Rob.
Rob, we're going to be looking at this every 5 years at least. And in 5 years, if this changes at all, then we could take further action to get more water.
Correct.
So we're not looking all the way through 2045. Every 5 years, we will do another, 25-year look ahead.
Correct. And we hope as a state, and each retailer is going to have a lot more data on their water use. So we hope to have more accurate demand projections. And then I hope we know more about Delta Conveyance Project and other state water project things happening for those projections.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rob. Great presentation.
Thank you.
That would conclude the staff report, unless there's any other questions.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept and approve Board Order 7C1, the Urban Water Management Plan.
And that would be Rob. I'll second that motion.
That's B1.
7B.
I second the motion to approve Board Order 7B1.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions or discussion? Hearing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
George Lane, George, Shelley Sourceable,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you. Does that conclude your report, Director Sourceball? Thank you. Now we'll move along to item 7C, Water Master Committee. Director Paris, do you have a report?
Actually, our general manager, Dwayne, will give that report.
Thank you.
Yes, Board President Dias, members of the board, in your packet on page 270 and 271 is the agenda for tomorrow's got that on my mind, the Water Master meeting. And in looking over the agenda item, there is a couple of new production applications. And in addition to that, there's an update on the draft work plan for the Water Master for the budget for the next 3 years. Other than that, everything seems pretty routine. If there's anything in particular that the board would like to direct their representative on, now's the time to do that. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward agenda for tomorrow's meeting.
And if I could just add, Dwayne, we are having a workshop to discuss enforcement issues as it relates to outstanding production reports, individuals that are out of meter compliance, pumping outside the judgment. And that workshop is tomorrow starting at 9 a.m.
Yes, that would be 1 hour prior to the Water Master meeting.
Will that include the water that's being stolen out of the aqueduct and out of the ground from the illegal growers on the west side or the northwest side, east side?
No, that will not be, because that's not within the jurisdiction of the Water Master. Only as it relates to the groundwater basin.
I thought that the Water Master board was going to discuss the groundwater that's being pumped out of the ground in the wells that are being drilled out there.
Yeah, there has been talk of having that discussion with Water Master board, and that is part of the enforcement discussion to crack down on the illegal pumping or pumping without a production right.
Okay,
but not,
good.
Not discussion about the State Water Project or drawing water out of the aqueduct illegally.
But Shelley made a comment. She said, drilling. How can a driller drill without a permit?
Correct. And that there is a process in place that we have with LA County Health Department to ensure that any permitted well gets approved by the Water Master prior to the Health Department issuing that permit.
But any driller that wants to drill an illegal well can just go out there and do it. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the part we need to crack down on.
Right. And that's what the public has been asking the Water Master to address, is the illegal activities out there.
It's Shelley, I believe there's part of that is a discussion on jurisdiction, who has the who has the legal authority to be able to do anything about it. And I think that's the discussion that needs to be had, because there's land use and county code enforcement and other items that they have where they have the legal authority to do something with regards to areas where they're doing things without a permit. And the judgment doesn't have an enforcement action for that. And that's part of the reason why we're going through this discussion, to find out who's the most appropriate agency and who has the legal authority to be able to address these situations.
Yeah, because this has been going on for months. And so there's no real resolution to the problem. And, people are looking for answers.
Understand.
Well, I have a question. How do they, I understand they can illegally drill a well to do it over a weekend or whatever, but I don't know how they're getting power hooked up to it.
Well, they're more likely using emergency generators and other types of things.
We got to somebody needs to contact Edison and make sure they're not hooking up to illegal wells.
Right. Exactly.
Because a solar well won't pump enough water to get what they need. They need serious power.
Understand.
Okay.
Matt, is the water master doing that workshop, or is that a special group doing the workshop?
No, it's being held by the water master. So it starts at 9 a.m. with the water master board, and our attorney Craig Parton has put together a presentation we can go through.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Are there any more questions or discussion regarding tomorrow's Water Master meeting? Hearing none, we'll move along to item 8, General Manager's Report.
Thank you, board members. This is the General Manager's Report for August of 2021. As you can see, here's our watershed that supplies all of our water, and you can see that it's very dry and very high levels. Let's see, turn this on here. There we go. Once again, here's the chart that we utilize. These are all the stations that are monitored to give us an idea of how much precipitation is in the system. You can see here we hadn't had any significant rainfall since February and March, and we pretty much straight lined through. And we anticipate that we'll end the year at 23.2. This is average here. These are the 2 wet years that we had just recently. And this is the wet year we had, and this one here for the 2 wet years with 82 and 83 in there. So you can see this is 2014, 2017, 18, 2019, and 20. So we're on the road to having the second driest weather outlook for the State Water Project. Here's the drought map that's prepared and released by the federal government. And you can see most of fall California is in exceptional drought. Reservoir levels. Here's the map you can shows you where we are at with regards to our reservoir levels. Here's Lake Oroville conditions. We find ourselves way down here. 23% of capacity, 34% of average. Average would mean that we'd be right up here at this red line up here. Yes, right there. And you can see similarly where we're at with regards to San Luis Reservoir. If we take a look at the mapping from this, you can see that we have current storage about 800,000. And these are the 2 driest years on record, or the lowest that the reservoir's ever been at. And we're set to break that number, and with the lowest starting point, and it's that they've been keeping these records. Similarly, we're right at that very low point here, in the San Luis Reservoir, so there's not a lot of water left in that reservoir either. Closer to home, we have we're producing approximately 26 to 28,000 26 to 28 million gallons a day coming from our water treatment plants, most of which are coming from the Quartz Hill plant. You can see we have a little bit coming from Roseman and a little bit on the east side plant. And then our Acton intertie. Our geopurification process recovery from our water bank, and you can see that almost half of our total demand is coming from the various wells that we have, recovery wells on the west side. As far as water banking, the only water banking we're doing is putting some water on the east side, and then we're pumping that out just as quickly as it goes in. This is for water quality purposes. As far as we've had no issues with our finished water quality. As you're aware, when the deliveries are low, the water stays in the canal a long time. That adds to degradation of the water quality. However, the staff has been able to maintain the water quality coming out of our system. Our third quarter THM samples were collected. And then one of the things that we have to monitor for and track is, I can't pronounce this, but it's an algae microchronicin. And we go through that sampling just to make sure that there isn't any of that is entering into our system. Operation and maintenance updates. We're working on the north feeder by adding SNP water flow at about 2 million gallons a day. We're doing some repair work on the Bench Ranch 1 well. Roseman treatment plant is online, and a combination of those, both the SNP line and the Roseman plant supply. We also have a leak in the north feeder. It's on Edwards Air Force Base. Staff is contracted with MWL Isles to make those repairs, and we're procuring those materials to make those repairs. No confirmed COVID cases. And as far as meetings and events, we got the Water Master workshop at 9 o'clock tomorrow, the Water Master meeting at 10, and the CSD annual conference in Monterey on the 30th through 9/20. With that concludes my report. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Dwayne? Hearing none, we'll move along to item 9, Director's Report. Do any board members have a report for the rest of it?
I believe Director Donato had a couple of comments that he wanted to talk about, one having to do with Healy Farms, and possibly there was a mention that LA Department of Water and Power provides unlimited water supply to Healy Farms. I don't believe that's the case, although the water line, LADWP water, goes through the Healy Farms location and is very close by or goes through some of the ranch there, unless there's a separate agreement. I do know that the Department of Water and Power for Los Angeles is prohibited by their charter from selling water outside of their service area. So just pass that on for you.
Yeah, we'll check that. We need to check that out. We need to talk about the property, but they got 700 acre feet of water. I tried to get a hold of somebody before the meeting. That's why I was going to bring it up. But they said they do have, but it's only for their immediate ranch. It's not for. It's a deal they made when they put the line through their property. I guess they've owned the property for. Is George there?
Yeah, Yes.
That's I am right. That's my memory also. I've heard of that. So they let,
but they've owned that ranch for what, 80 years, Bob?
The water.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll get to find out. We didn't look yet.
I know one person that was the case.
Okay, the second thing I have sent in to the director's report, seems like the governor's changed his mind. He's scratching the environmental. He's going into fossil fuel. California is approved. Now this is interesting because nobody's even heard about this thing. They approved somehow 5 temporary gas plants as a drought crippling hydropower, and basically what it is that they're going to drill 9,000 new oil gas wells to produce natural gas, and it says of which reportedly has the individual capacity of generating 30 megawatts of energy. And although Newsom has repeatedly said that he supports managed decline of fossil fuel, he's the one who's pushing this project. So that's very scary, which means they're not telling us something. It means that the water that's coming through the hydro plants are cutting. The solar power is not working like they thought it would work, and now they're having a problem with the hydroelectric plants. The reason I'm bringing this caution to the agency is if they start cutting down power, do we have I know we spend a lot of money on generators, but aren't those propane? Aren't they natural gas generators we have?
They're diesel generators.
No, I think they're John? Is John there?
Yes, he's motioning to me that they're all diesel powered.
The new ones?
Yes.
I can't believe we're able to buy those. That's interesting. Okay, yeah. I thought they were. I don't know why I thought they were natural gas. Anyway, we better prepare. We might want to look at an emergency plan because I don't think they know. This is like a shock. I'm surprised it wasn't out to all the state water contractors when they were going through the environmental assessment, but I don't think they had one. I think they're just doing it.
I think you're right. Under an emergency order, one of the components here is the thermohydrolito plant, the electrical plant, hydroelectric plant that's at Lake Oroville has been shut down for the first time in its history because of low water levels. And so that's added some stress. Also, there was previously decommissioning of gas plants throughout the grid system for the state as part of the We're All Going to Solar program. And then also remember that Diablo Canyon and the other nuclear plants were taken offline. So all of these things have added stress into a system that has...
it's failed. The solar system has failed. I talked to a scientist today. We'll be watching it in the news. He says there's not enough solar in this state to cover 20% of our power, not even 20%. So it's not working. I don't care about the rest of the state. What are we going to do to protect our clients and customers? Right. And that's what I want to know. That's why I don't want somebody to tell me what we're going to do.
Okay. Well, we'll look into it, Frank.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more directors' reports? If not, we'll move along to item 10, attorney's report. Mr. Martin?
No report tonight, Keith.
Thank you. Item 11, do we have any requests for future agenda items?
Well, I mean, both those items, this one right here, this temporary, we need to address this. You can I want this put on for the next agenda so we find out what we're going to do, because whatever they're telling us, they're only telling us half the truth. It's worse than what we're seeing. I guarantee it's worse than it is. So we need to put this on the agenda to address how we're gonna, if we can't get the power to run our systems.
Would you like a report from staff at the next board meeting?
Yes, please. Or have it signed, or have it, if they feel it's urgency, then they can have a committee meeting or something.
Dwayne, would you give that some thought, please?
Sure, be happy to.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, you know what? Can you imagine 9,000 new wells? That's crazy.
Yeah, I'll have to look into it.
I got the report right here from Sacramento, right in front of me. I sent it to you guys. I didn't send it to the whole board. I sent it to the committee, and so the whole board should see what I sent you, Dwayne and Keith.
Okay, thank you. Item 12, closed session. Do we have a reason to go into closed session tonight?
Yes, we have item C.
Just item C.
Correct.
Okay, do I have a motion to go into closed session for item 12C?
This is Director Miller. I move that we go into closed session for item 12C.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
George Lane,
Yes.
Shelley Sourceable,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes, measure passes. We'll go into closed session as soon as Holly can make the transition.